What does the mature version of yourself look like? Does it value order and stability, or material abundance, or maybe exploring your inner self? In this video I want to explain the 8 different levels that we can go through in our development as a society as well as an individual. So I hope that this will give some clarity about where you might be going and where you're coming from, and also where you are right now. So let's get present. I'm really excited about this topic because when I discovered it a few years ago, it just gave me so much clarity. I went from walking through a fog into just having a direction of where we are going. It's basically just the suggestion of a timeline that you might want to follow in your life. But before I explain this mental model, I first want to give you 2 words of caution. The first is that different levels of development aren't per se better than the other, just like monkeys aren't better than dinosaurs just because they are further in the evolution. It all depends on what is necessary in the context, in the environment. And the second thing is that this is just a theory, and like any other theory, if you start to believe in it too much, you will get blind spots, and also there will be a certain point where you see that it might not be true. So you should always just keep thinking for yourself, obviously. And I think it's good to be skeptical. That's also why I researched how this model was created. So Claire Graves, who was interested in psychology and also the development of humanity, asked his students the question, what will the mature version of yourself look like? And he kept all these records, and he kept going back to the same students year after year after year. And he started to discover certain patterns. So he was even able to predict the values that they would have in 5 or in 10 years. And he realized that when these students came back, they were all descending through different stages. So the first stage that I want to talk about is called the automatic stage, or the beige color, which is just an infant or someone maybe in a war zone or with a nervous breakdown who only values the safety and their food and water, and that's just it. So this is just a very simple starting point. And the second stage that we go to is the tribalistic stage, where we place a lot of value on symbols and rituals. So when I think about this stage, I remember this movie, The Avatar, with the blue people, because they believe that there are spirits inside the trees and inside the animals. And this is also when we start to think really symbolically. So when you are able to reach this part inside of a person, you can really connect to them on a deeper level. So I think this is also what's happening with, for example, Apple or Tesla or Bitcoin, because these things are becoming symbols. And just like the teddy bear that we used to have when we were younger, we put a lot of value on them. But after a while of living in this tribe, we start to question our leaders. So this is also when the child starts to question his mom or his dad. And he slowly grows older and he gets into the egocentric stage, where instead of focusing on his tribe, he's now just focused on himself. Examples of this are barbarians, warlords, and they notice that just by using brute force and not feeling guilty about anything, they can gain a lot of power and wealth. And if I think back about this stage in my own life, I would say that it was when I was in my early teenage years and I was crafting bows and arrows and swords, and I was just playing with friends, fighting plants or whatever. And I think that there's also a problem in our society, because it is inherent in us to have this warlord energy to explore things, and that's also a good and healthy aspect of this stage. But where do we have to go when we cannot explore things anymore, when this energy is not appreciated anymore? So this is, I think, what's happening also in our society with younger people, and the only place that they can let themselves go and explore and conquer stuff is by playing games. So I think this explains why many people are playing games, because there's still this explorative warlord energy inside of us that needs to unfold. And this is also the stage in society when there's the haves and the have-nots, because some warlords rise to the top, but a lot of people are just have-nots. And in order for the warlords to control the have-nots, they create moral systems, and also the have-nots justify their suffering by coming up with ideas of the afterlife, because their current life kind of sucks, so they just tell themselves that it will be better later. And this is when we go into the saintly stage, where there's a really big emphasis on order and law and morality. And in this stage we all think in terms of hierarchies and classes. So examples of this are the samurai who live by their samurai code, or the military who follow the orders of their hierarchy. So certain religious groups that live by strict codes of what is right and what is wrong, because this level of development is also associated with black and white thinking, so there's no middle ground. And when societies are living in this level of development, they can actually be really peaceful, because they are living for something bigger than themselves. So examples of this stage that I found in my own life was when I was living in Japan. People never cross the red light. So they just obey the rules, because that's how the system works. And another example was when I was visiting an old man in Japan in his shop, where he created beautiful bowls inlaid with gold and beautiful textures. And he didn't create these to show off or to be better than anyone else, but he just made them just because the product had to be beautiful, and the product and the craftsmanship had to be good. And that's also one of the strong points of this level of development, because they have certain standards and certain rules, and they just follow these rules and they make beautiful, good, high quality products. But some of the downsides of this level of development is that they kind of ignore pleasure, because that will come in the afterlife. And that's also when they start to wonder if there's maybe something else, and we move towards the next level of existence, which is the materialistic level, where we are currently in. This is also the level of development where we are trying to conquer the material world, and we start to think in a scientific way. We indulge in all the material abundance because we have been ignoring the fact that we actually have needs, because we always lived for the afterlife, and now we are living just for this moment, for the pleasure in the here and the now. And because we started to approach everything in a scientific way, we lost the connection with anything that's bigger than ourselves. Because when we look back at all the previous stages of development, we were always connected to the tribe or to the religious group, and now we are just living for ourselves, playing the game just to be the best possible. And eventually, if you peak at this level of development and you try to live in this material abundance, you realize that you don't have any connection with yourself or others left, and you start to burn out, you start to feel disconnected and unhappy. And this is, I think, where a lot of people in our society right now are. And this is also a good thing, because this pushes them onto the next personalistic level, where we want to care about the world, we want to care about others, we want to care about everything that's living and around us, and we get more in touch with our feelings. But the problem in this stage is that there's too much group thinking and there's no clear sense of direction, because everyone needs consensus before we go to the next step. And this costs a lot of energy, but there's also a lot of beautiful things. For example, Burning Man, psychedelics, Woodstock, New Age spirituality, and all these kind of things. And in order for people to move to the next stage, they should start to ask themselves the question of at what cost are they sacrificing so much of their consensus and of their own comfort. And this is also something I've experienced in my own life, where I used to really care a lot about sustainability, and then I took the train from Europe to Japan, traveled through Russia, and kind of realized that I'm really living in a green bubble, and people in really many places in the world don't really think about sustainability. So it started to sink in to me, at what cost am I sacrificing my own pleasure and joy? And even though it was a great journey, obviously, but the bigger message is that you have to realize what it costs to always try to have consensus among everything and always care about everything. And this is when you will move to the next stage, which is the cognitive stage. This is the stage where the person loves to learn. It sees a teacher in everything. It wants to constantly keep experimenting, and all the ideas that he or she gathers have multiple layers, and there can never be enough information, and there's also much more complexity. Nothing is black and white anymore. There's always subtleties in between everything, and there's way less dogma. So people in this stage really want to do what is good at this moment. So whether the society needs anarchy or capitalism or a dictatorship, it doesn't really matter, because they see that at this point of the development in the society, there's a certain need, and they should go together instead of being dogmatic about how the rules and how the order should work in the world. They know that what they think today and what they believe today can be different tomorrow. And this stage eventually starts to become curious about advanced philosophy and metaphysics, and it kind of raises the question that if the universe started with the Big Bang, maybe, just maybe, there was something intelligent that started it. And all that knowledge pushes it into the next stage, which is very uncommon, but it's the experientialistic stage, where people realize that they are part of a bigger, greater whole, and they are caring about the whole earth, and they are not per se interested in reading and getting knowledge, but they just learn from being and from observing, and they are so aware and so in touch with their bodily functions that they can have a new level of control over them. So an example of this could be Wim Hof and the Dalai Lama, or other people who channel certain beings. Sometimes they anthropomorphize these energies, but they are more like a vessel through which certain energy is moving instead of actually doing it themselves. So there's a different connection of relating to the universe and to the world around them. And I have to admit that this last stage sounds kind of out there, but I really hope that these 8 stages helped you to understand that which path you are taking in life, and if you can reflect back on any of these stages and see them in your own life. So whether it was just infancy, or being tribalistic and really valuing certain symbols, or living more like a warlord and needing to explore things, or living a saintly existence where you just listen to the people on top of the hierarchy and follow the rules, or when you get tired of this, you just live for the material world and just go all out in conquering material wealth until you feel empty, and you go to the next stage where you connect back to nature and you connect back to the people, but there is no direction in life. So you start to learn more. You get into this yellow cognitive stage, and eventually, maybe one day, we will reach this turquoise experientialistic stage where we just are and we learn by just being. And after hearing all of this, I'm genuinely interested in what you envision the mature version of yourself to be. So you can put that in the comments. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.